The little engines were clearing their line of leaves and broken branches. Hedge cutters were kept very busy, trimming trees and bushes so that visitors could see the view. Rusty took them up and down the line every day to tidy the line. Then, at the end of the day, he'd take away as many cuttings as he could, but he could only manage a few at a time, and as fast as he went, more would take their place. The other engines did their best to help, but they had work of their own to complete. "Just what we need in this hot summer weather," cried Duncan. "Extra work." "It's necessary," said Skarloey. "Must keep the passengers happy." "He's not wrong, though," said Peter Sam, feeling very tired. "All these branches and brambles take up too much of our time, and they grow too quickly for us to make any real difference." Then they heard a loud whistle that made them all groan. It was George the steamroller. He'd heard everything. "Useless puffballs," he snapped, "letting silly little things like branches get in your way. We road vehicles don't have to worry about such things. We can go anywhere. Any branches in our way, we can just go around them. In fact, I bet I could flatten any shrubs that dared get in my path." "Rubbish," snorted Peter Sam indignantly. "We don't let a few branches get in our way." George just rolled away, sniggering nastily. "Never mind him," said Rusty soothingly. "He's just trying to wind us up." "All rollers and no sense," agreed Duncan. But Peter Sam still felt cross. He didn't like anyone accusing him of not working hard, and he became determined to prove George wrong. A few days later, Peter Sam had the morning train. The coaches were full, but the rails were dry, and Peter Sam didn't mind the extra load. He puffed happily along until, just before the tunnel, he found that in the night, a high wind had blown hedge cuttings all across the rails. "We'll never be able to get through that lot," said the fireman. "Maybe we can still call for help at the last signal box," said the driver. But Peter Sam remembered what George had said, and he refused. "Huh," he said, "they're only little branches, nothing to it. We'll simply push them aside." "Have it your own way," said the driver. "If we stop to clear up properly, we shall be here for ages, and some passengers might miss their train at the bottom station." Peter Sam puffed bravely on. He went slowly at first, and the branches were pushed away easily. Then came a stretch where the cuttings were brambles. Peter Sam began to regret his boasting. Not only were the thorns prickly, but they caught in each other, and the branches stayed firmly put. "Ouch!" exclaimed Peter Sam suddenly, and he stopped. "I can't move," he complained. The fireman got out to look. "It's no good," he said at last. "You've got brambles caught in your valve gear, and steam can't get into your cylinders. We shall have to cut you out." The fireman pulled on thick gloves. Then, while he tried to clear away what he could, the driver went to ask the guard if he had a knife. Some of the passengers had knives too, and came to help. But even then, the job took longer than expected, and by the time Peter Sam was free, there was no hope of getting the passengers around the lake and back in time before James's train left. The driver phoned the manager at the station. On the way home, Peter Sam passed Rusty pulling a long train of freight cars. Rusty worked hard, and before long, the line was clear for trains to run normally. Peter Sam's front was sore for many days after that. The other engines laughed and advised him to bring a snowplow next time he went out, and asked if he had a knife in his cab. At last, Skarloey told them to stop. "I really can't see what all the fuss is about," remarked Duncan innocently. "They were only little branches after all, nothing to get prickly about." Then, much to their surprise, Henry passed with a goods train, and high up on a flatbed sat George. "What happened to him?" asked Skarloey. "Silly steamroller didn't want to wait in traffic," replied Henry, "so he tried cutting across a farmer's field. Sank in the mud. Took 3 tow trucks to pull him out." "I guess sometimes," said Peter Sam, "going around the problem isn't much better than going through it. Just look at all the new problems it brings up."